Welcome to the Open Book. My name is Sister Jean Marie Kirby, a Carmelite nun. It's almost 70 years now since I entered right after high school. But I can't say it's always been easy. That's not why I entered, make it easy. I entered because I wanted to give myself totally to the Lord for His service. And so when I can always read, excuse me, what I'm trying to say is it doesn't depend upon the length of time. The Lord said sometimes those who come at the 11th hour get paid as much, if not even more sometimes, because it's not the length of time. It's like there was a conflict between we are justified by works or we're not justified by works, we're justified by faith. Neither can you put any of those totally. We can't gain heaven or Christ by our works. But you can't, faith without works is dead, as St. James said. And I think in the original, in the Bibles, that at the Reformation, the epistle of St. James was taken out because he says works are needed. If you say to your wife, you love her, and don't look at her, don't do anything to her, don't ever buy her any presents or anything, do you love her? I don't think so. You have to show by your works, but it's not the amount of works or how you count it up, it's the greatness of your love. And so that is, the Lord is a lover. And if you've never experienced it, I really experienced it myself. Really, I was very lonesome in school. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to have a good friend. I wanted to have a personal friend. And where I grew up, they were all boys. They weren't girls around. And I yearned for it. But at school, the children all liked popular music. And I grew up, I love classical music. I love operas, waltzes, the Strauss's waltz. All those, they went to movies every day. We went to movies as a family. They listened to all the programs. We listened as a family. All these, and so I just was, I went into the chapel, and when I went into there, the Lord touched me with a touch that was changed my whole life. And I was a teenager. It was all this and heaven too. I enjoyed the world because I was just a teenager growing up, and I enjoyed the Lord. And after about a year, the Lord said, now what do you want? And that's when I chose the Lord totally. I say totally, it doesn't, you say you love the world, all the pleasures of the world. When you take it innocently, especially as a family are doing it, the Lord made things for our enjoyment, but not for a life of total enjoyment. We need both summer and winter. And we can't grow without any hardship. I repeat, and it's a very important thing. I think it shows that you can say, I know all this written in this book, if you do. You can say, I understand all this written in this book, the Bible, maybe. But you can say, I have gained the wisdom of all that's written in this book. You can't say that without any hard knocks. A person who's never suffered can never understand others. We can either grow by our sufferings or be stunted by them. It's our choice. And especially as when we unite our sufferings to the sufferings of Christ, then it takes on a divine value. And the Lord is very close when we really seek to find Him. And the gentleman, I should know his name, but I can never remember, who invented the Apple, the Macintosh computer and the Apple iPad, etc. At the last, he was beginning to think more about eternity. He had cancer, I think it was, and he was beginning to think about perhaps there was an afterlife. And his last words before he died was, oh, no, excuse me, that's wrong. It was, wow. And that was his last words before he died. Because when we seek the Lord, he seeks us evermore. And the Lord cannot be outdone in generosity. He comes forth, he will try you. He said he will prune you that you may bring forth more fruit. His Father's glory, if you can bring forth, be his disciples and bring forth much fruit. And but that's not, but then when he returns overflowing, pressed down, shaken together, running over. There's no joy like the Lord. But don't think it's all joy. As the Lord took up his cross, he said, we must take up our cross. And if we do it and unite it with the Lord, it can bring forth great graces to even save the world. I say save the world. The Lord said the kingdom of heaven is like yeast hidden in which one puts in the flour for bread, and just a little tiny bit, but soon the whole is, so that no man is an island. We all do part. We never know whether one act of ours. There was the sister who did. She had chicken soup for the soul, and I think she ended up by bringing a whole airplanes of orphans over to the United States, and she started. It all began with cupcakes. They had cupcakes after Mass, and it was to help. Not after, and so it was to help the whatever, it was a group. I don't really know the group it was. It was to help her, and so. But anyway, so she took a cupcake. Then they asked her to be a member, and then she became president of it. And then they asked her to go over to the Far East and to bring forth a couple orphans that were over there. So she went over there. And then they got the order from the president. He had all these orphans. He wanted them brought over. So she brought over all these orphans. He said it only began with a cupcake. And so we never know what the Lord does. Oh, I wanted to tell you, today is Ash Wednesday, so you see the ashes on my forehead. And the ashes, Ash Wednesday, marks the penitential season, prepares us for Christ's resurrection, death and resurrection on Easter Sunday, and following the example of the Ninevites. That reminds me, I wanted to tell you, when you hear prophecy, don't fear prophecy. Prophecy is not given to make us afraid. It is given for our profit. And like in the Ninevites, you can change it by your prayers and things. I even say that I realize that in the United States, where things, a lot of evil is, the Lord has many people in the United States, and the faith is strong among much of his people, and it will draw down graces. And many of those places can be kept from a lot of the destruction and things that are coming upon the world, because there's a relationship. As soon as sin entered into the world, man could not live forever. It's the worst thing in the world for evil to have no end. And so it has inside evil is self-destructive. It has a seed of self-destruction in it. And so, like you see the evil today, if you only a few years ago you had Germany, and you had the Nazis, and you had the terrible things that were taking place, but that doesn't exist now. But you also had then the children today don't really realize what communism is. First of all, communism is really a world bank. It was saved over in Russia. It was almost doomed to fade out. It was saved by Rockefeller and one of the large bankers and the others. It's a universal bank. And if you don't know it, the Federal Reserve Bank does not belong to the United States. It's never been audited. and is not owned by the United States. I just let you know that. And if anyone tried to do anything to it, I think Lincoln tried to do something to it. And I think Kennedy tried to do something to it. I don't say that was totally the cause, but you can't touch it. And the same thing is, communism says they're for the poor, so they take money from anyone who has money, they take it, and they give it to the poor. And then they bring all the poor before them and get rid of anyone who can't be of help. Get rid of all the babies, get rid of all the old people, and get rid of any of those who can't work. And that's what they did. They killed people by the thousands, hundreds of thousands, over in all the communist states. If you only know. And if you know, in Scripture, it says, and the beast basically is communism. One of the apparitions of Our Lady, she definitely said that it is. It is communism. Communism, you can't take just as a political power. It's a diabolical power. And it seeks to get into religion, into education, into the politics. And because of the politics, they can control everything else. But don't think it's just political. You get into every aspect of your life. And also then you see in Scripture where the beast is slain, one of his heads receives a deadly wound. But the deadly wound is healed and it comes back to life on a single nation. And then, if I might take it to that right in here, excuse me, I'm going to get rid of that. And so I have some very important things that I want to bring forth. Let's see. Wait a minute. I'm getting old, so the thoughts will leave my mind very quickly. Oh yeah, I know what I wanted to do. Excuse me. But I'm not ashamed of getting old. I don't want to go back. And so, let's see. You had this is where it is. The fifth seal. You had the opening of the seals, and if you'll notice, the white seal is the Lord's army. He conquers with a bow. And then the next one is the red, and it is is that the next one? Excuse me, I just have to see the opening of the seals. The first a white horse, the second was red horse, and I think that's where we are in now. You see how the blood is just means nothing. It's just taken, the ISIS and others. And then the next one is the black horse, and that's famine. And that will come as a result of so many of the things. And then your pale, anyway, I'll just make it there. You have then also, because the opening of the seals, the trumpets are the sounding of the warning, and then you have it poured out, the actual. In fact, if you go, this is to bring back something from one to another, into Ezekiel. The Apocalypse is a combination of almost all the books of the Apocalypse. But the Apocalypse is almost a combination of all the books of Scripture brought together, beginning with Genesis. And so when you have, this is where you have Gog and Magog, 1,000 years between the first and second coming of Christ. And then Satan is let, after 1,000 years, Satan is let loose upon the earth. 1,000 was the farthest the Romans could count. So when you have 1,000 years, it's the completion of number. So 1,000, 10,000 sealed of all the tribes of Jacob. That would mean all the 144,000, so all God's people. And then you saw a great group of all nations, peoples, and tongues, where they washed themselves in the blood of the Lamb. I say this because it shows that evil is self-destructive. It will destroy itself. And the very basis of that prophecy, one of it is, I will lead all nations into the valley of Josaphat, and there I will plead for my people and my inheritance, Israel. Nations, nations in the valley of destruction, turn your plowshares into swords and come up against my people, but I will take their part. It is a cross-reference to the second book of Chronicles, 20th chapter. All the nations have come against Josaphat. He doesn't know what to do with his little tiny army, and he gives himself to prayer and fasting. He calls for prayer and fasting. And a prophet rises up and says, don't worry, the battle's not yours but God's. So taking courage with singing psalms and hymns, he went out to meet the foe. And in the meantime, the Moabites begin to fight with the Edomites. The Edomites begin to fight the Serenites, the Ammonites and the Moabites, and they all begin to fight with each other. And when Josaphat gets to the top of the hill, he looks down and sees the slain before him. And he goes down and takes their spoils and calls it the Valley of Blessing. It is a like work of what God will do in this time. And is also compared to singing the song of Moses and the Lamb, another exodus out of Egypt. And thus is what it is said, as the Lord brought out of Egypt, he will bring you out during this time. And so he has, there's a number of things I want to say. I don't think I can get them all in. First of all, I think I will go to where you have the fifth angel sounded the trumpet, and I saw a star fall from heaven upon the earth. And that's a star fall of a great person, or fall of this, I would say, fall of a nation, where communism comes back to life. And there was given to him the key of the bottomless pit. And the bottomless pit was open, and smoke arose as a great furnace. It's a symbolism of atomic war, of the atom. I said that's not symbolism yet of the war. It's a symbolism of the atom, and the breaking of the atom. And ours was a country that opened up that. And the smoke from the pit arose. And then there was commanded them not to hurt any of the grass or any green thing, but only the men who don't you have it today, touch nothing that is green. You can kill save the moth and kill the child. And so that is not that taking care of our environment isn't very important, but nothing goes to extremes, because then it is backwards. And the Lord said, subdue the earth. He gave his blessing for us to see all the marvelous things he has put into his creation. But when we take the glory, when we go against his law, that is not it. And the shake of the locusts were as horses prepared for battle. And how would you call an airplane if a person saw 2,000 years ago, when nothing of that was invented? They saw locusts prepared for battle. They had men's faces on them, and breastplates, and they had over them the king of the bottomless pit, which is Satan, hell, and the name in Hebrew is Abaddon, which means extermination, because that's what they shall do. With the atom, they will exterminate themselves, and don't be among them. And how can you prevent it? Turn to the Lord. This is the time of God's covenant. The Lord never said he would come again in the flesh. He would come again to establish his kingdom, and that is what he shall do. And it's when in Isaiah it says, "Go into your homes, places, and close the door and shut the door for a while until the indignation pass." And it's going another symbolism of where the Lord says that when they begin to say, "Blessed are the wombs that have not borne, and the breasts that have not given suck," Then they will say to the mountains, fall upon us, and to the hills, cover us, and save us from the wrath of the Lamb. And that is a cross-reference to the Apocalypse, where I'm half quoting each of it. Who shall save us from the day of the Lord? The day of the Lord is a divine intervention of the Lord, of his faithfulness to his covenant to save his own. And from these, those whom the Lord brings out of this, he will, what brings out of this time, he will start a whole new, 2/3, 2 parts I will destroy. The third part I will bring through fire and water, and I will refine it as silver is refined, and it will call upon me, and they will be my people, and I will be their God. Does God will the destruction? No. Hold back the winds, that the destruction will not come until I seal all my own. When basically speaking, they refuse the message of repentance, and they kill the messenger who is sent, then God lets them do what they want. And that's what really is. You'll see there's two, there are two witnesses. There are two, they brings you to the 4th chapter, Zechariah, I think it is that, where you see the candlesticks and the oil, the 2 olive trees, and he says there, the 2 olive branches are the 2 sons of oil. But I'm jumping from one thing to another. If I'm not too quick at saying this, forgive me. But anyway, you have just the way the prophecy reads. You can't read it just literally. The Lord said, I speak in parables, so they will not understand. The Lord wants it sealed until the time. But it appears that the Lord is opening the books now. He wants it open because it is for your salvation. It is good that they are open. And let's see, oh yes, I know what I wanted to do. Think of the 12th chapter in here. This is a little bit of the way prophecy is written too. Excuse me. It's not a good idea to do it like I do. No, excuse me. I know what I wanted to say. I might have to say it before. Okay. Well, what I really wanted to say is that you have the vision, the 2 witnesses, and their bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which is called Sodom in Egypt, where the Lord also was crucified. And you see that that's not one, that's 2 prophecies put together. You have where this place where Sodom and Egypt, that's in the nation, where their Lord also was crucified. And that's the second prophet. That's over in the Holy Land in Jerusalem. And so that you, then you also, if you notice that very chapter, you have things in the present tense and you have things in the future tense, because it is all written there. But it is, it's in parables. I speak so you will not understand, because God does not want guilt to come upon us when it is not the right time. The Lord never wants guilt upon us. He does it to save us. He does it to help us. And there's a few things. Let me do this first. I need to do this book. This is a time of God's mercy. No matter what anyone has done, God's mercy is there. If you have all the sins of the world upon your soul, but you turn to the Lord in sorrow, you are forgiven. He has paid the price with his blood, so that now in particular. But he also warns, there is a time of the cutting off, like in Noah. Not that his mercy is ever cut off, but the time of his mercy, when the judgments begin to come, the doors will be closed, and you can't get into the ark. There's also this, I say, this picture is not exactly this one, but it's the Christ of mercy with the words, Jesus, I trust you. And the blood the covenant is coming forth from his heart, and also the water to wash us. And this is like the blood on the doorposts of Egypt, where one of the promises where this is a covenant picture, and where it is put up with honor and part of the covenant of God, as in the blood on the doorposts of Egypt. That place, the Lord said, I will keep that place from destruction. And I've known a place where it was all fire around in the houses, and where they put up this picture and said, don't move it, that house was not burnt. It's not just putting up the picture, it's a covenant with the Lord, you with the Lord. And so I recommend this. You can get it practically any of the Catholic stores. You can get it from Amazon. I think you can get it. And then this I recommend really, you can get the best one. They have many places where you can get it now. But the National Shrine of Divine Mercy, the Shrine of Divine Mercy, and if you look it up, you'll see the Shrine of Divine Mercy, and it's the fathers there of the priests have it there, their shrine. And but also I wanted to say, or repeat again, and I hate to bring this up, but what I mentioned about our president, don't think he isn't American at heart. I say he is communist, and all his things have come, all his czars and everything else of the sort. And he is, when I say he's an activist, he's an extremist, why do you think he's released all the ones from the Bay, where he released all the prisoners? And why did he give a traitor in result for many prisoners, for many of them to be released, of the ones that wanted? He did not treat him as a traitor. The whole country would be in revolution almost, but is all put into mystery, because everything he does, he said he abolished the day of prayer, Christian prayer, but not the day of Muslim. They met at the White House. It's not just being a Muslim, but what's an extremist planting a bomb or allowing the bomb to be planted. But no, that God is supreme over all. And the morning's at 7, the earth is dew pearled, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. Browning's poem. If you trust and turn to the Lord, all's right. Don't delay. God love you, and God loves you.